This is John St.Clair again at the University of Mary Washington. I'm here today in the office of Dr. Chris Foss. Dr. Foss is interested in universal design, and I'm anxious to talk to him about how he applies those principles in his teaching. Chris, I'm somewhat familiar with the concept of universal design, but would you explain that to our audience? What is universal design?
Sure. And start off more broadly. If you think of something we're all familiar with, which is the curb cut at the end of sidewalks.
Yep.
On the street corner, originally designed to allow somebody who's getting around in a wheelchair to make sure they can get from one part of the sidewalk across the street to the other part of the sidewalk. Once those curb cuts started going in, however, you had parents pushing small children in strollers, kids or adults on bicycles, on skateboards, who suddenly found, hey, these curb cuts are pretty handy,
Yeah.
and appreciate what that particular design feature does. So that, broadly speaking, universal design, I think, is thinking about a variety of different sorts of environment and the ways in which that environment can be as open, as inclusive to as many different people as possible. So if you take that basic sort of concept and apply it to education or to teaching and learning, you're looking for a way in which the planning and the delivery, and also I guess the planning and the delivery of course instruction, and also eventually the evaluation of the learning, is as much as possible taking into account the idea that we all know is true, that just as there are a variety of teaching styles, we've got a lot of diverse learners out there.
Right.
And if the whole idea of education is not about asking people to memorize certain bits of information and kind of give them crucible testing to see who can pass the test, but we want as instructors, we want to be teaching and we want our students to be learning.
Absolutely.
Then why not try as much as possible to facilitate as much learning as possible? And if creating an environment that will allow as many different students to thrive in their own ways, if that's at all possible, why wouldn't we want to move in that direction?
Absolutely.
You know, with your example of the curb, one of the things that I know about universal design is think of it at the beginning.
Right.
It's so hard to take that concrete sidewalk, cut out a section of the curb, and then make it accessible.
Exactly.
But if we design it in from the front, then it not only helps the person in the wheelchair or the stroller, but it helps everybody. Like you say, it has universal access, universal appeal.
Right. Yeah, and that, I mean, for me, my interest in universal design, as you know, we've talked about it before, the real impetus was because of my interest in teaching students with disabilities,
Right.
and an interest in disability studies in general.
Right.
And when a number of the professionals who are working in the field of universal design for instruction are talking about the ways in which we deliver our instruction to students with disabilities in particular, the general line of thinking is the current model that's still dominant in higher education is the accommodations model, where you have a student with a disability come in. What's your disability? What accommodations do we need to give you? Do you need extra time on your test, etc.?
Right.
And that approach ultimately is like a Band-Aid approach, where you're taking each case individually, you're retrofitting a class that's already existing and saying, what do we need to change about that so that it might work for this person? And you keep reinventing the wheel over and over again for each new individual that comes in the system, and oftentimes for each new course that individual is going to take throughout. But as you say, if the planning happens earlier, if you're seeing disability as not as some sort of deficiency on the part of the individual or the learner, but as a difference that's resulting from the relationship between the individual and society, or in this case between higher ed and the way courses are usually delivered, then you understand that if you can work at the design level in the first place,
Mm-hmm.
that you don't have to keep reinventing the wheel. That it's it's built in as part of the environment, and it's it's already in place for for as many different learners who are going to take your course for future iterations of the course that you're planning. So, in the limited work that I've done, trying to implement some of this into some of my courses, I found it takes an incredible amount of time and energy to rethink courses in this way. That said, once the investment is put in, however, it's actually not only does it actually work out to be a time saver to some extent for me
Mm-hmm.
when I'm in the crunch time and actually teaching the class, but maximizes the learning that the students get, but it also maximizes what I get from the students,
Right.
because it's allowing them to cater their strengths and to showcase what they're learning in a way that will allow them to put their best foot forward.
Right.